All right, here we are actively recording. So let's pick up with another lesson here in the PAA Senior Audio Elective. Today we're going to run through some basic mixing techniques very quick to put a quick mix together. Today is Friday the 13th. Woo! So we're picking one of the student songs and we're going to make a stereo master fader. And I'm just going to start playing the song. I'm going to add the plugins that I normally need. So right away I go to my master fader and I add this linear multiband. It got a little louder and the tone changed. It helps me mix. I also put something else on my mix that generally makes it louder. So right away what we want to do is put a couple of things on my master fader that's going to help me shape my mix. Now I'm going to just add my tracks. I have pretty good levels over here. I'm going to add my primary track right now.
Come on, is it really that hard to make you?
Wait. Alright, so we're going to go back to the beginning. We're going to just pick a good area to work on because I can't waste time. So I'm just going to loop a good area to work on where the vocal's active. Let's pick maybe where the music starts. We want to get the level as low as possible so we have a good balance of music and vocal. Okay. Now what we need to do is I'm just going to mute the track for now. And I'm going to work with adding an EQ on the vocal. And every time you add an EQ, you almost always add a compressor. We 99.9% of the time do an EQ and a compressor. The EQ gets the tone good, the compressor balances or controls the dynamics. So there's a lot of buttons on here, but I'm setting somewhat slow attack and fast release in my threshold here. You hear how it's, or see how it's controlling the volume right here? This release is very fast. Here when it's slow, it holds the vocal back. You don't have a lot of punch or attack. When we have the attack and release fast, it essentially is like the fader moving up very fast. It gives a lot of punch or attack to the sound. And we'll start with somewhere around 6 to 10 decibels of compression. Now let's add the music. I'm going to go to the music. See how I boosted in the music? And it starts to clutter the vocal. It's masking it. That's an easy way for me to use the EQ to detect what's going to clutter Julian's voice. So if I boosted it, can't hear his voice. I can literally hear his voice. Now, I might go to Julian's vocal, now that I affected the music and left some space for Julian. I'm going to go to Julian's vocal. One thing I'll show you that I'm going to do on this video as well for you guys is show you a frequency of interest chart. Let's see if audio frequency of interest chart pops up. It probably won't. No. Alright, that was a quick waste of time. There's an audio frequency interest chart in your book as well. It shows you what frequencies are good on vocals, what to take out, what to add, etc., etc. So, little too bassy. Here's our EQ plugin. here's our input level right here. Here's our output level. Let's do a quick test. I want to show you how I will boost a frequency and you're going to watch the output of this overload. Let's try to induce distortion on Julian's voice a little bit and see what happens by boosting a frequency.
You're gonna set the hanger on fire, man, I promise. Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone.
Here how it gets raspy, it's too boomy, etc., etc., and you're seeing that the plugin is clipping. That's from adding too much gain with EQ.
Set the hanger on fire, man, I promise. Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that.
Now, let me put the two together.
You're gonna set the hanger on fire, man, I promise. Everybody's subconscious.
Let's bypass these two EQs on the music and his vocals, and let's hear the difference, with and without it. It should have separation with EQ from the vocal to the music. Without it, it should be cluttered.
You're gonna set the hanger on fire, man, I promise. Everybody's subconscious.
Without it.
Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't funny and putting others down ain't gonna make you any money. Now tell me you ain't never been. You're gonna set the hanger on fire, man, I promise. Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't funny and putting others down ain't gonna make you any.
So right there, we just used EQ to kind of create separation. Let me bypass the compressor also on his voice.
You're gonna set the hanger on fire, man, I promise. Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is.
You hear his voice start to jump out sometimes. It'll be a little soft, and then it starts to jump out, and it's a little soft, and then it jumps out, and it's a little soft, and it jumps out. So what plugin do I use to correct the dynamics? Compressor.
You're gonna set the hanger
Listen
on
without.
fire, man, I promise. Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't funny and putting others down ain't gonna make you any money. Now tell me you ain't never been. You're gonna set the hanger on fire, man, I promise. Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't funny and putting others down ain't gonna make you any money.
Now, I'm going to go really fast, and I'm going to add a stereo reverb, because reverb is much like a bagel. Nobody wants to eat a dry bagel. That's what I say. So nobody wants a dry vocal. So we're going to add a slight reverb to Julian. Remember we talked about the perception of space? We're going to try to give Julian a perception of being in an acoustic environment. So we're going to add a reverb. It'll give us a direct sound, early reflections, and reverb. Let's try this and fill up his voice a little bit. Yeah, good stuff.
Conscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds
Okay,
is.
that might
Come
be a
on,
little
think-
too much. I get it.
Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what
Well-
the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't funny and putting others down ain't gonna make you any money. Now tell me you ain't never been insecure. Making fun of someone really ain't mature. The path ain't gonna.
Now let's listen to the reverb. We're going to have to turn it up so we can hear it. I'll play it with the reverb. It's subtle. And then I'll mute it, and you'll notice this dimension go away from his voice. I think your voice sounds great, by the way.
Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't funny and putting others down ain't gonna make you any money. Now tell me you ain't never been insecure. Making fun of someone really ain't mature.
Do you hear a little bit of acoustic environment? It's super duper subtle. For example, you don't even recognize the reverb in this room right now as I'm talking to you until I make you aware of it. Now you might ignore my direct voice and start hearing the reflections of my voice off the walls and other things. That's what you have to do with your mind, is separate it from the direct sound, start listening behind the sound. Because I've done this a lot.
Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't funny and putting others down ain't gonna make you any money. Now tell me you ain't never been insecure.
It adds another dimension. It reinforces his voice. We're not going to overtake his voice, I'm also going to add a delay. And we're going to do the same thing with the delay. We're going to use that to support his voice. This slight delay, while I'm setting it up, if you're listening to my story, I want to emulate that Julian is at this end of the classroom and I hear the sound of his voice bounce off that wall and come back to the mic. That's sort of what I want to emulate. So it's going to be very short. At first you're going to laugh because it'll be long, and then I'll make it short so you don't really distinguish it.
Everybody's self-conscious. Someone's fault. That's what the odds is. Come on. Digging at someone really isn't funny. And put others down, ain't gonna make you any money now. Tell me you ain't never been insecure. Making fun of someone really ain't mature.
Sounds terrible, but it's going to give us this short reflection. They generally make this rule of thumb that 1 millisecond is equal to 1 foot in audio. So this makes me think that the wall potentially could be 40 feet that way, and his sound bounces off a 40-foot wall. Now this is a 40-foot room we've recorded in, if I blend it properly.
Everybody's self-conscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on. Digging at someone really isn't funny. And putting others down ain't gonna make you any money now. Tell me you ain't never been insecure. Making fun of someone really ain't mature.
Is it affecting his voice? It has an effect to it. It's not affecting his voice. We're not losing the message. But then when we mute it out a little bit, we'll hear the difference. It will be subtle.
Everybody's self-conscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on. Digging at someone really isn't funny. And putting others down ain't gonna make you any money now. Tell me you ain't never been insecure. Making fun of someone really ain't mature. The path ain't.
So now we're adding a perception of space. Let's add the reverb also and hear the difference with the two of them.
Everybody's self-conscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on. Digging at someone really isn't funny. And putting others down.
Take
ain't
them
gonna
both
make you
out.
any money now. Tell me you ain't never been insecure. Making fun of someone really ain't mature. The path ain't gonna get you a career. Like, come on. Everybody's self-conscious.
So now we have a little more. If we add this with the music, let's add it with the music and see if it helps support his voice. Give it some character.
Everybody's self-conscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on. Digging at someone really isn't funny. And putting others down ain't gonna make you any money now. Tell me you ain't never been insecure.
Let's mute it.
Making fun of someone really ain't mature. The path ain't gonna get you a career. Now come on. Everybody's self-conscious. Look at someone's
Very
flaws.
dry.
That's what the odds is. Come on. Digging at someone really isn't funny. And putting others down ain't gonna make you any money now. Tell me you ain't never been insecure. Making fun of someone really ain't mature. The path ain't gonna get you a career. Now come on.
Career, like small words like that are short, they lose their emphasis. You don't really notice it when you add it, because you shouldn't. You don't really notice. You're not like, oh, Mr. Burke's talking in a classroom. I noticed that from the acoustics. But when we mute the effects out, you go, okay, it doesn't sound right. It has no depth or character. I used a reverb and a delay. A subtle delay and a subtle reverb.
Everybody's self-conscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on.
Some people might do this for a vocal delay. Let's give a bad example.
Everybody's self-conscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on. Digging at someone really isn't funny. And putting others down ain't gonna.
When you're young, you go, hey, that's a cool effect, and then you add it and embellish it, but it's really taking away from the message of the words, the song, the lyrics. That's what we can't do as audio people.
Everybody's self-conscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on. Digging at someone really isn't funny. And putting others down ain't gonna make you any money now. Tell me you ain't never been insecure. Making fun of someone really ain't mature. The path ain't gonna get you a.
All right, so I think we have a good basis. We have one lyric. We dialed in our EQ and our compression. And we worked with the heart of the song. What else do we have? Another line right here, another verse. So let's make sure that one's blended in.
So take your best view.
All right, well, we can maybe fix it later. You want to get...
Everyone should be able to be the themselves. So take your best view off that old shelf. Cause you haven't been true in a while. Couldn't afford the pressure, so you ain't been you in a while. Safe place behind your walls is hard to leave. But I tell you that's the only way to achieve. And you're dealing with the same issues that we couldn't believe. But we all feel that pressure is trying to do well.
We can fix that for you. So what is this Cass and Fiona track? What is it, your ad-libs? Shh. Okay, so they did ad-libs. Watch what we're going to do. Hold on, we're making a video, so. Let's compress it really hard. So every one of the things they say is very accurate. You hear how much compression is on this? Hear how I give them a lot of attitude with the compression? It has a lot of attitude. Now it's kind of bassy and warm. Let's try to get the bass out of it, and let's try to add some clarity. Let's listen to this without it. You can hear they don't have much emphasis. Let's listen to it with the EQ and compression. And I'll pull them both up so you can see how they're both working and what we boosted or added.
Yeah, get your legs. Oh yeah. Fizzle. Set on fire. Return. Yeah. Get your legs. West wing, east wing. We gonna set the hangar on fire. West wing, east wing. We gonna set the hangar on fire. Man, I promise. Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's cause. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't fun. On fire. Man, I promise. Everybody's subconscious. Look at someone's cause. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't funny. And putting others down ain't gonna make you any money. Now tell me you ain't never been insecure. Making fun of someone really ain't mature. A patent ain't gonna get you a career. Like come on, is it really that hard to adhere? Everyone should be able to be them themselves. So take your best you off that old shelf. Cause you haven't been true in a while. Couldn't afford the pressure, so you ain't been you in a while. Safe place behind your walls is hard to leave. But I tell you that's the only way to achieve. And you're dealing with the same issues that we couldn't believe. But we all feel that pressure is trying to do well. Trying to do well. Won't back down. Won't back down. Won't back down. Won't back down.
You know what I think would be cool for their voices on the ad-libs? It should sound telephony. Agree or disagree? Where does this start? The beginning of the song?
Stand up. Yeah, get your legs. West wing, east wing. We gonna set the hangar on fire. West wing, east wing. Burn. Yeah. Someone's lost. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't funny and putting others.
That's not too bad. Let's compress Janessa. Same thing with Janessa. Let's compress her. You see how it really adds a lot of attitude? The compressor? Now we can just stick with this one part. Take some of the bass out of it again. Let's add some reverb to her. Now we have to add actually a different reverb to her. Her reverb's got to be, what would you say? Longer. Good job. Reverb long. Let's make a longer reverb here. It might not cover up her background vocals, but yeah. Input. That should have been a stereo reverb, but I made a mistake.
Stand up. Yeah, get your legs. Yo. Yeah. Stand up. Yeah, get your legs. Hey. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, get your legs. Hey. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, get your legs.
All right, let's see what this looks like. Now we've gone through and kind of like worked from our basis, added EQs, compressors to everything, some effects. See where we are at.
Stand up. Yeah, get your legs. West wing, east wing. We gotta set the hangar on fire. West wing, east wing. We gotta set the hangar on fire. Man, I promise. Everybody's self-conscious. Look at someone's flaws. That's what the odds is. Come on, thinking that someone really isn't funny. And putting others down ain't gonna make you any money. Now tell me you ain't never been insecure. Making fun of someone really ain't mature. The path ain't gonna get you a career. Like, come on, is it really that hard to adhere? Cause everyone should be able to be them themselves. So take your best you off that old shelf. Cause you haven't been true in a while. Couldn't afford the pressure, so you ain't been you in a while. Safe place behind your walls, it's hard to leave. But I tell you, that's the only way to achieve. And you're dealing with the same issues that we couldn't believe. But we all feel that pressure is trying to do well. Trying to do well.
I think we did good right there. We just have to work on this little fade out here and get that little, yeah. Fiona. Yeah. And that is the not so quick way, but quick way to put a mix together. What do we do, about a half hour? So if we want to, on a final review, what did we add? We wound up adding EQ to almost every track so we could get separation. We wound up adding compressors so we could add dynamics. I wound up making a master fader, and I put a couple plugins on the master fader that keeps the whole mix together. And we've added reverb for one guy's voice, a delay for somebody's voice, and another longer reverb for the long singing parts. That is it. See ya on the interwebs.